Rob Gray. I'm the secretary of Waverley Lodge and the building chairman of the Guelph Masonic Centre. Well, the Masons in Guelph first began meeting on Wyndham Street in about 1866. And by the time 1914 rolled around, they decided that they needed a new building. They were up from one lodge to three, and they needed a little bit more space. And one of the brethren in Guelph Lodge, number 258, I believe it was Brother Andrew Malcolm, had property available, and they constructed around an existing limestone building. They constructed a three-story building that has been the Masonic Centre from that day to this. The work in particular for the renovation was a long process to get to the point where we were actually doing some work. It started long before I was born, back in the 50s, when somebody came up with the idea that we needed to do something with this building or we were going to lose it. And by 2000, we started doing it. And Right Worshipful Brother Paul Johnson, who's a member of Waverley Lodge, he was the chairman of the temple board when we began the work. Very Worshipful Brother Rod Blair from Guelph Lodge was the general contractor. And there were a few other Masons that worked on the building as we went along. There was a significant change in that off to this side, we've had a fire exit put in where previously there was an exit at the far end of the room in the southwest corner that led to a fire escape. This one leads out to a concrete tower where there is an elevator and a set of concrete stairs. So we've got much better escape routes in terms of any danger. There was a lot of structural steel added to the building that goes right down to the basement, all the way up to support the third floor. And there was a lot of cosmetic work done. We had new carpet put down in the blue room and new tile put on the dais in the north and south. We had painting done. The columns were original, but all of the color was cut in around the columns, so they were original. There was a young lady came in and did some magical touch-up work, blending patches that were made on the columns. She blended those in, and they are really hard to find now. And there was a fire system, safety system added. The building has got a full set of sprinklers in it. There's heat sensors, there's updated electrical work, there's updated plumbing. And all of that took about 2 or 3 years. And now we have a temple that we're very proud of. And we're very fortunate as well. We have quite a long stretch on Quebec Street in Guelph, and we have a lot of retail space that we use, and that supplements our income and offsets some of the fraternal expenses necessary to keep the building running. I think from a historical perspective, the value in maintaining older buildings like this one is there is a connection from our modern time that stretches back through the ages. For me, for example, my grandfather was a member of Guelph Lodge, and I know that he was initiated at the altar that is right behind you back in 1938. And I was initiated at that altar in 1996. For me personally, it's quite a connection to think of not only him, but how many other people that I know that have gone before me and have come into a really remarkable fraternity in the same way, in the same place for decades. That said, if suddenly the building were to disappear, it isn't going to, but if it were, what is it that makes masonry masonry? Is it the space, or is it the place, or is it the people? I think there's great value in preserving history because there is an awful lot that history can teach us. we can look to what worked at a time when things were working well. What's not working now, what is working now, we can compare them. We can find ways to integrate those things. But if we were to lose the building, would our lodges, the lodges that meet in Guelph, would they continue to exist as those lodges? Yeah, we'd find a place to meet. We would find a way to rebuild. Because it's about the people as much as it is about the room. It's been a bit of a mixed bag, really. Back in December, when there were a few lodges that were able to meet in that brief window where we were open and then we were closed again, Waverley Lodge being one of them. Generally, a number of the lodges that are meeting in this building have said we are fully open and in line with the province's mandates. Waverley Lodge is running about a half a step behind long-term care and congregate living settings, just for an abundance of caution. That's what the members of our lodge have as a preference. The Masonic Centre board has installed touchless hand sanitizer dispensers in the anteroom, the common areas, elevator lobbies, stairwells, that type of thing. Because I think going forward, that is going to be something that's going to be of value. And we also have a number of different individual pumps around the room to help give people peace of mind. If they want to use them, they can use them. Masking has been at the discretion of individual lodges. I think that COVID has brought us to a point where we can look at that a little bit more closely. We've always been kind of dismissive of the common cold and the flu because everybody gets it. Most of us survive it because we get it on a regular basis. But the notion of having some hand sanitizer around the room is not something that I'm averse to. I'm not germ-phobic particularly, but I can certainly see the value. We do an awful lot of handshaking and an awful lot of close contact work in a lodge room. And it only takes one person to show up sick and everybody's got the flu or everybody's got a cold. So I think going forward, it's something that we're certainly going to look at. We don't have touchless faucets, but that's something that as we look at updating some of the fixtures that are 20 years old, that's something we could certainly consider. Well, I think that the general contractor and the designers who worked on the building 20 years ago, they did the lion's share of that work. Anything that we do now really is out of a sense of maintenance. However, that said, we have, as you probably noticed on your way in, a large development taking place just across the road from us. And there's going to be 2 large apartment buildings and a new branch of the Guelph Public Library and a number of other businesses or organizations that are going to be using that space. And we have always looked at Chapel Lane as the back of the building. Well, 20 years ago, it actually became the front of the building because there's no direct access from Quebec Street. We used to be 32 Quebec Street, and now we're 21 Chapel Lane. So there is some consideration that needs to be given to cleaning up and updating the back facade of the building because it's going to be directly opposite 2 very modern and rather impressive buildings that are part of the Baker redevelopment program that the City of Guelph is doing. So that is going to take some work in budgeting funds and staging out that project. And it's going to take the approval of the board. I really think that after 2 years, if reasonable measures are taken in that people are behaving reasonably with consideration to the person that they are standing opposite, I think that's going to be great. There are a lot of people that I haven't seen in the last few years traveling around because we haven't been traveling around. And I hope to get down to Grand Lodge and I hope to see a lot of those fellows. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's also going to be an interesting change not being at the Royal York. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad change. I think there's some opportunity there, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds beyond 2022.
I think